4. The proletarian revolutionary presentation of the question of self-determination of nations. The petty bourgeoisie had put forward not only the demand for the self-determination of nations, but all points of our democratic minimum program long before, as far back as the 17th and 18th century. They are still putting them all forward in a utopian manner because they fail to see the class struggle and its increased intensity under democracy, and because they believe in peaceful capitalism. That is the exact nature of utopia, of a peaceful union of equal nations under imperialism, which deceives the people, which is defended by the union of by Kautsky's followers. The program of social democracy, as a counterbalance to this petty bourgeois opportunist utopia, must postulate the division of nations into oppressor and oppressed, as a basic, significant, and inevitable under capitalism. The proletariat of the oppressor nations must not confine themselves to general stereotyped phrases against annexation and in favor of the equality of nations in general, such as any pacifist bourgeois will repeat. The proletariat cannot remain silent on the question of the frontiers of a state founded on national oppression, a question so unpleasant for the imperialist bourgeoisie. The proletariat must struggle against the enforced retention of oppressed nations within the bounds of a given state, which means that they must fight for the right of self-determination. The proletariat must demand freedom of political separatism of colonies and nations oppressed by their own nation. Otherwise, the internationalism of the proletariat would be nothing but empty words. Neither confidence nor class solidarity would be possible between workers of the oppressed and oppressor nations. The hypocrisy of the reformists and Kautskyites who defend self-determination but remain silent about nations oppressed by their own nation and kept in their own state by force would remain unexposed. On the other hand, the socialist of the oppressed nations must in particular defend and implement the full and unconditional unity, including organizational unity, of the workers of the oppressed nation and those of the oppressor nation. Without this, it is impossible to Without this, is it impossible to defend the independent policy of the proletariat and their class solidarity with the proletariat of other countries in face of all manners of intrigues, treachery, and trickery on the part of the bourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie of the oppressed nation persistently utilize slogans of national liberation to deceive workers. In their internal policy, they use these slogans for reactionary agreements with the bourgeoisie of the dominant nation. For example, the Poles in Austria and Russia, who come to terms with reactionary with the oppression of the Jews and Ukrainians. In their foreign policy, they strive to come to terms with one of the rival imperialist powers for the sake of implementing their predatory plans, the policy of the small Balkan states, etc. The fact that the struggle for national liberation against one imperialist power may under certain conditions be utilized by another great power for its own equally imperialist aims is just as unlikely to make the Social Democrats refuse to recognize the right of nations to self-determination as the numerous cases of bourgeois utilization of Republican slogans for the purpose of political deception and financial plunder, as in the Romance countries for example, are unlikely to make the Social Democrats reject their republicanism.